Guys, it's John, and I wanted to run through this week's slate of games. There's a couple in here that I think are kind of dead giveaways as far as, because we're kind of that time of year where teams are essentially going to be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs or not. We're pretty close to where the divisions are going to start being decided too. But there's a lot of games in here that I found interesting this week. So anyway, I wanted to run through them. So some teams I still have faith in, while others I just am willing to admit that as good as I thought they would do, they're not in my opinion going to do that good, and vice versa. There's teams that I still think are going to finish pretty poorly. The Steelers are one of them. I don't think they're going to do much. I'm not saying they don't make the playoffs, but I don't see them making any kind of run. And then you got teams like the Vikings, where all year basically I just felt like their streak was not going to continue, and they're still doing pretty good. So anyway, which right off the bat is kind of interesting. You look at the spread and seems kind of interesting to me. It's a little low in my, even with the Bears at home, with the way these two teams have been playing, you think the Vikings would be bigger favorites here, closer to like where the Lions are. But anyway, so yeah, Bucs Giants. Bucs are a team that I do think are going to. You got them and you got the Falcons. I don't think more than one NFC South team's making the playoffs. In my prediction video, I chose the Falcons. I did say that I kind of see them and the Bucs as interchangeable, just because whoever gets in the playoffs, whether it's the Falcons or Bucs, I think it'll be the Falcons. But whoever it is, I don't think they're going far. I think they're probably a first round knockout. But anyway, I think the Bucs are going to win this game, but I like the Giants to cover. So I like the Bucs to win, but the official play is Giants +6, just because I think it'll be a close game with DeVito. But again, I think they're going to have the Bucs stay pretty close to the Falcons. Chiefs Panthers. This is an interesting one. It's about right for the spread, I would say 10.5, because the Chiefs have had a decent bit of close games, and then they're on the road. So between those two factors, that's why it's not like a 14-point spread. I do think the Panthers are going to cover. The Chiefs are coming off their first loss, so I think maybe having them have a little bit of a hiccup at this point in the season is the only thing that makes sense now. Again, I think it's no surprise they're going to the Super Bowl. So you have to have a couple small things happen, and maybe winning a close game against the Panthers, or don't think they lose, but maybe it comes down to the end, and then they can start, quote, doubting the Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs, again, I think they're going to win, but I like the Panthers to cover, which a little rare for me. Typically, the teams I have winning, I usually have covering as well. But I think we're going to have a decent bit of games where one team wins, the other team covers. So yeah. First one again, I think the Bucs win, Giants cover. Second, I like the Chiefs to win, but I do like the Panthers to cover. This one, I like the Commanders to cover, to be honest. I'm willing to admit the Cowboys, who I had winning the NFC East and just doing very well. I had them representing the NFC as far as the Super Bowl. It's obvious they're not going to do anything with this team. It'd be too much of a Vegas liability for them to do anything, because the payouts are insane right now for Dallas. You can see just for this game, they're almost 5-1. So like almost for you can almost get a 500% return just if the Cowboys win this one game here. So obviously they're doing a rebuild, which is fine. A lot of people told me a few weeks ago that's what they thought was happening. And I was like, I don't know, I think they might make a little surge here. But, even if they win this game, it doesn't make sense, for them to go on some crazy win streak. They're shutting down a lot of the players that would be needed for this team to make any kind of run. So I thought they would, even with Dak out, I thought they had a shot. But you could just tell, CeeDee's kind of looking like Devontae Adams before he got traded. And quite honestly, after he got traded, too. And a lot of the guys on the Cowboys, you can just tell the energy's not there. Actually, there's been a lot of good videos put out of people showing teams in the Super Bowl, and it basically shows the body language. You just YouTube, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Super Bowl 55 team's body language or something like that. You could type scripted in or something like that. And yeah, there's multiple people that did it. I don't know. I know one person put it out and then a bunch of people copied it basically, but yeah, it showed like a couple Super Bowls in a row. The winning team came in and they looked super hyped coming out of the tunnel, backstage beforehand in the locker rooms, and then the team that wound up losing the game, they came into the game looking like they didn't give a shit. So I bring that up just because it's just something I noticed. I look for like energy, and there's just nothing with the Cowboys. So I'm willing to admit I was wrong on that one. And this is a very heavy spread, 10.5 points. So even though it's Washington at home against a depleted Cowboy team, you'd think just because it's a divisional rivalry, the Cowboys are fighting for the playoffs, all these different reasons, it would be a closer game. So the fact that it's 10.5 makes me think not many people are going to be taking the Commanders here minus 10.5 points. So I like, again, this one, I like the Cowboys to cover. And an upset wouldn't shock me, but I'm sorry, the Commanders. I like the Commanders to cover here because if they're going to win, they're going to cover. I feel like it's not going to be a close win. And like I said, with other teams, I could see it because then you could still keep them in the picture. But again, I just don't see the Cowboys going on some kind of 7-game win streak, which would probably be what is needed for them to make the playoffs. So yeah, I mean they'd still be 3 games behind the Commanders with a win. So yeah, for other teams in this spot, I could maybe see the upset, but for here, I just think the Commanders are going to pound the Cowboys pretty hard. Patriots, Dolphins, and also because the Lions are like right now running away in the NFC, you have to have some other teams look pretty fierce, including the Commanders and Eagles. So anyway, Patriots, Dolphins. This one I do like obviously I like the Dolphins to win because you got Tua back. Now all of a sudden they're making a little bit of a run. It keeps the AFC interesting. As far as covering, I'm going to take them to cover. I think that, again, 7.5 is about right, I think. But the Dolphins haven't had many establishing games. This could be a perfect one for them. Kind of flex, again, Hill and Waddle and just how they kind of did at the beginning of last year. They had people thinking the Dolphins would win the Super Bowl. Let's not forget that. So I think they can come out if they pound the Patriots, kind of like a message game, and that'll set up Miami versus Buffalo or whoever they play in the coming weeks, which will make it a much more entertaining game if the Dolphins kind of look like they're in their old form. So I like the Dolphins to cover. Here we got Texans, Titans. I'm going to take the Titans to cover. The upset possibility, I do think the Texans probably just win. But 7.5 at home is the reason I think it's this one should be closer to like this Commanders game. I think, or the Chiefs. I think the Texans should be at least 10-point favorites here at home against a horrible team. So the fact that it's only 7.5 makes me think it's going to be kind of a grittier, lower scoring game. Again, Titans might even get the upset. I don't think they do, but I do like the Titans here plus 7.5. Lions, Colts, another one. So you got 7.5 again. The difference is at least the Colts are at home, whereas in this case with the Texans, they're at home and only given 7.5. For Lions, Colts here. Again, the Colts they're kind of keeping themselves in the playoff picture, which I think they're a very boring team. Especially without Richardson. I think Flacco. They kind of ran that story last year with the Browns, and they could do it again. So like an upset wouldn't shock me. Keep them close to the Texans. I just personally don't see it. I think Detroit's going to win this game, but after the pounding they put on whoever the poor souls were last week, I forget who it was, like the Rams, whoever I think we had the Lions covering, so it worked out for us. But I think everyone's going to be on the Lions here. Even minus 7.5. So I like the Colts here to cover. Another one where the upset wouldn't completely shock me, but again, I think the Lions are going to be. They're the only team that them and the Cowboys. Again, I went into this, and more so the Cowboys, to match up against Mahomes were the only ones that really make sense to me. As Eagles and Niners would be repeats, which we could get rematches. I just don't think we're going to. So again, for the Lions here, I feel like everybody, as far as the public's going to be on the Lions, but I feel like some games are narrative games where they, kind of set things up so they can get their ratings going, and then a lot of games are just traps. So this one could be a little bit of both. But yeah, I like the Colts for the cover here, getting 7.5. Might be a close game, but again, after the shellac and the Lions just put on whoever it was last week, it was a crappy team. I feel like they're not going to have them do that again. Vikings Bears. Bears have to win this game, and I think Vegas knows that because the Bears should probably be like 6-point underdogs, even at home. Their coach is such a bonehead, and in general, their team's a laughingstock. If you really look at, I mean, I haven't seen as laughable material as I have about Matt Eberflus. Whether it's just Bears fans on Twitter calling for the man's head, or just pointing out some of the things this man, like, people have just typed out, like, his literal game time decisions. Like, there was a minute left and Matt Eberflus called a timeout, and then 3 seconds later, he needed that timeout, and he let the clock run out, and they lost. And it just looks like it's a joke, like the decisions this guy makes. And I've seen it too. I've seen him like burn timeouts. Like I'm actually more convinced now than ever that the coaches are as involved, if not more, than the players, which would make sense if you think about it in the scripting of these games, because these play calls make no sense. This man had like a minute of time, and that's why the Bears fans are calling for him to be fired, and that's why, because they had that 47-yard kick or whatever it was, and the guy just, wasted basically a minute of clock. It reminded me of the Jets when they had Herm Edwards kind of doing stuff like that. So anyway, long story short, there's no reason for the Bears with this kind of coach and just how inexperienced they are and how good the Vikings have played, in my opinion, for this to be only 3.5-point spread, even at home. So I'm going to take the Bears to win. Again, I think they're going to keep the NFC North really interesting. The Bears sneaking in the playoffs still makes sense to me. If they lose, then, again, a lot of teams are already going to be basically established for the playoffs before we even get to the end of the year, which is where they get all their drawing, the big rating games. So, yeah, the Bears make the most sense here from a betting standpoint, as far as more people are going to be on Minnesota for sure, in my opinion. And the fact that they do have a lot of hype around them. I do think they're going to fire their coach. He's going to be the next head coach fired, in my opinion, but I don't think they're there just yet. So, yeah, I think they improved to 5-6, keep it within a couple games, because then they got the Lions and the Packers coming up, and I think they just lost to the Packers, right? Because of the coach. But either way, they have the Vikings, Lions, they got the Packers again coming up, then the Vikings again. So I think if they lose this one, even those next 3 games are going to mean nothing. The ones going down the stretch, and I was looking at the primetime matchups just to kind of see, and there is some focus on the Bears. So, got Bears winning there. Broncos Raiders. This one's always a tough one because I feel like, even though they're 6-5, I feel like both these teams suck. I feel like nobody pays attention to them. I will say that on the road to be giving up 5.5, to me, just even though the records don't really reflect it, I feel like it should be closer. I feel like a few more people are going to be on the Raiders here. And Bo Nix, they have been hyping since college. So I can definitely see them giving him a little bit of a push. I don't think they're making the playoffs or nothing. But the Chiefs got a convenient loss. So the Broncos win this game. I think they play the Chiefs one more time. They can at least be close enough to say it's for the division. And you get the Chargers in there too. So I'll take the Broncos to win and cover, just because I don't think anyone's going to be on them. Niners, Packers here. Interesting 6-point favorites. I imagine someone's out for the Niners because this doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really commute. McCaffrey was out. Then he came back. I don't know if he's out again. And even if he was, okay, so Purdy's the one that's out. That's why. I was gonna say, even with the records and all that, it doesn't make sense. The Niners are never 6-point underdogs. So anyway, uh, honestly, I like the Niners to win this game outright. The reason being, for like a year and a half now, there's been this talk: is Purdy good enough? Is he just good because the team is so good, because the system is so good? So now you bring somebody else in, and if he looks pretty good, again, now they can start having stuff to talk about. Like, oh, should they ride with Purdy, or should they go with the guy who might be better? So I think he might come in and win the game, keep things interesting. And again, a Packers loss keeps the NFC North and NFC in general much closer. And same with the Niners win, because you got the Seahawks Cardinals playing each other. So yeah, I like the Niners here to win and upset the Packers. Cardinals Seahawks. This one really could go either way. We would have a 3-way tie if the Seahawks win and the Niners win. So that's definitely a possibility. Actually, we could have a 4-way tie. And that's what I'm going to go with, just because they like that kind of stuff in the NFL. It's also very satanic, so I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 teams eventually move to 6-6. But yeah, so I'm going to go with the Niners to win, improve to 6-5. I'm going to take the Seahawks here, which would make them and the Cardinals both 6-5. And I'm going to take the Rams to win outright against the Eagles. So the entire NFC West will be 6-5. I think they do a lot of that kind of stuff if you look at the numbers with football. And again, it keeps the division nice and close. Seems like the Packers and Eagles, if they lose these games, they're not going to be running away with the division. Same thing with the Cardinals. If they lose, a lot of the divisions and the wild cards, all that different stuff, will be much closer. So, yeah, I think that sequence makes the most sense for the Niners to get it, Seahawks, and Rams. And then Monday night, I'll cover that here. We got the Horror Bros going against each other, of course. They would never. And it's on ESPN, the same people that wrote Mickey Mouse, let's not forget, Disney, own ESPN. And now you got these two brothers matching up. And then again, it's just more reason that I believe it's definitely scripted. But, who's going to win in this fake matchup? I think it makes sense. If you look at the Vegas line, as both teams have looked good, I do think that this line's about right because the Chargers are at home, but the Ravens are the better team. I'm going to take, in this one, I'm actually going to go with Jim. I think Jim's going to take this one. Just because I feel like they have a little more money probably tied up with John over here with the Ravens. I could be wrong, but I feel like just more people are going to believe in the Ravens in this matchup, only laying 2.5. So I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with Jim Harbaugh. I also think John's going to go further in the playoffs. I think they might match up again in the playoffs. I think in my prediction video I have them getting matched up in the playoffs. But either way, I think John's going to go, the Ravens and John Harbaugh are going to go a little further in the playoffs. So I'll give the Chargers this win again. Jim can get the win on his brother, and he'll probably get bumped in the first round, whereas John's probably going to go to the divisional round where I think they'll get bumped by the Bills or something. Still setting up Bills-Chiefs. I think we're definitely going to get that one. Just because it's like the Manning-Brady rule. We're getting that every year, I feel like. Or at least like every other year. So yeah, I'm going to go with the in this one, the Chargers, just to win outright and improve to 8-3. It also keeps them closer to the Chiefs. So again, when they play the Chiefs, I think they have one more matchup with each other. The stakes will be much higher because they'll actually have a shot of, if they win the game, they're within a game or maybe tie up the Chiefs for the division. And for a second, people might believe that the Chargers could win the division. So, yeah, if you notice, like, whereas a lot of weeks, some games have playoff ramifications, this week, basically all of my picks, and it just happens to be the way the slate lined up, I'm basically just picking what makes sense for the playoffs and as far as the coming weeks before the playoffs. So, should be. I say this every week. Last week was like a very break-even week. We didn't like do anything crazy. We got a few, pretty good calls. I feel like, and then we missed a few as well. We didn't like do great or terrible. It was just kind of right down the middle. This week I expect to be more of a on the nose week. I think we're going to have a lot of things right over the target, just because we're getting right to that point where, again, those final slate of games before the playoffs, where you have all the divisional matchups and things like that. So, I think we're going to have a good week, and take care, and happy earnings.